Cage Minds. We're grabbing coffee with Coach Ray Yee and Chris Luttrell. We have them backwards from how they're going to say this, of Luttrell Yee MMA. Thank you for the time, guys. And I guess we'll start off. There's been a lot of story there is behind this partnership. We started with Luttrell MMA and Albuquerque kickboxing. So I don't know how you guys want to jump into this, but when did you first, get together, meet each other?
We actually had met before.
Yeah.
We became partners or started working together. We kind of knew each other through word of mouth and kind of through the martial arts scenes here in Albuquerque.
And now, both of you New Mexico natives? Or where's the story with that?
Chris is. I'm not. I'm originally from the Pacific Northwest. I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. Spent most of my adult life in the Seattle area. I did a lot of traveling for training, but I ended up here in 2002 when I first opened up my first dojo, which was Albuquerque Martial Arts Academy. So it's gone through quite a few augmentations over the years.
And then, Coach Ray, how long have you been in the martial arts? When did you start?
I started in 1980. I was 10. So it's been a few years. I won't do the math for you, but it's been a journey. It's been a lifetime endeavor, and absolutely love it. It's my passion. It's what I love doing, and I'm just blessed enough that Coach and I are able to do it for a business.
And MMA, as we all know, it blends the striking and the grappling worlds. Coach Ray brings the striking, and that's where you started off most of your training?
Honestly, I've done a ton of different arts. My very first art was a style called Wing Chun Kung Fu. A lot of people know it by the movie Yip Man and Bruce Lee. So that was my first introduction to martial arts. My uncle was an instructor. My grandfather was an instructor in Tai Chi, and so I did that and a bunch of other hard styles. Karate, Taekwondo, Judo, Jiu-Jitsu, Japanese style, and a ton of different things before I kind of got into the Muay Thai and the Filipino boxing and stuff like that.
And Coach Luttrell, New Mexico native, Albuquerque native?
Yes. My father was in the Air Force, so I was born in Roswell, actually, and then he moved around in Japan, Kansas, different Air Force bases, and then I ended up here since. I was probably in the 5th grade. I ended up in Albuquerque, so been here a while.
And your athletic background started with wrestling, I believe?
It did. Parents had us in all kinds of sports, just swimming, football, pretty much trying everything to keep us out of trouble. And then we started wrestling, and then fell in love with that, and wrestled in high school and college, and we made a world team, represented the U.S., went to Sweden on a world team, and wrestled in college, got me a scholarship, so I'm blessed. And then I was at a martial arts gym, and that's kind of how it all MMA started in Albuquerque. Was that chance meeting.
And I've seen the old picture. You're one of the first 3 black belts from Greg Jackson. So that's where, did you have a martial art background before getting with Greg?
A little judo. So I was doing, after wrestling, I competed in tough man contest and used to get into a lot of fights. But formal training, I started training at a judo academy with Jesse Blue.
And now, how did you both go from the martial arts path you were on to coaching? I don't know who wants to go first, but you each have your little story for that, I'm sure.
Well, for me, natural progression in most martial arts dojos or kuns is that, as you progress, you start becoming like a mentor, like an older brother to the newer students. And, I started doing that and then, found that I enjoyed it. My instructors always, used me for demonstration, purposes. And then I started becoming an assistant instructor. And then an instructor, and actually doing my own classes, running a satellite program, helping one of my original Sifus, Sifu Chris Clark. He's a master level instructor with the Washington State Criminal Justice Training Center, and so I started assisting him doing defensive tactics back in mid-late 90s, I believe, and that really kind of led me into other things, doing combat submission wrestling, cross training with really amazing instructors like Eric Paulson, and doing the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and the catch wrestling and the Greco and freestyle stuff.
And then, Coach Chris, how did you end up becoming coach from where you were an athlete?
So I was at a judo gym, and I ran across Greg Jackson at the time had his top student, who was I think he was a purple belt, Brad Aaronsfield. We met at a judo place, got introduced, and I would say a year before that, maybe more, almost around the same time, a little bit previous to that, Mike Winklejohn called me up and said, "Hey, I understand that you've wrestled and fought here and there, and do you want to come and spar?" And so I went down to his place, and me and Mike started sparring and sharing ideas, and he liked what he saw, and so he asked me if I could start teaching some ground stuff, some ground fighting at his karate school. So I started teaching those ground stuff at karate school, and then trying to pick up as much ground techniques as I could through judo, and that's where I met Greg's top student. And so I went back to his place, and we sparred, and I tapped him out over and over, and so Greg kind of caught Greg's attention. He looked over at his top student getting run over. He's like, "Hey, who are you? What's your background? Where are you from?" So he's like, "Hey, why don't you start training here?" And at the time, Greg had never really trained under anybody. He kind of bounced around different gyms, but he was very young, and he didn't have really formal training on the ground. There was Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wasn't around, and so he, looking at books and magazines, he kind of did the best he could, and so he showed me a few things that he'd picked up, and I showed him a few things, and we just, he said, "Hey, come back and let's go through this and train with me and my guys." And so I started training there and teaching at Winklejohn, so it was real interesting. And then at the time I worked for Southwest Airlines. I was actually a flight attendant, so I would go off. I'd fly away on trips, and on my overnights, whatever city I was in, I would grab my dojo bag, and I would go and train. So I ended up training at countless gyms across the U.S. I trained at Hickson Gracie, Hoist Gracie, the Militich. I trained under John Lewis, like you name it. And I went over there and trained, and I'd bring it back to Greg, and we would dissect the techniques and say, "Hey, this works for MMA. This doesn't work. This works. This doesn't work." And we developed our system that way.
And you two have both been coaches down here in New Mexico for a long time, and through MMA really rose to prominence. Coach Ray Yee, people seen you back in the WEC days with Leonard Garcia, Cowboy Cerrone, several other fighters. And then Coach Luttrell, a little more recently, the world got exposed to you when Carlos Condit fought GSP, the first real big time when even the UFC was following you around. So now to where you've progressed to these moments, what is it like being an MMA coach and trying to get your game together, and we'll then go into how you guys got together?
Well, really, I think as far as the progression of MMA and where we are, what we're trying to do, we're still evolving. Chris and I are still evolving as martial artists. The day, one of my instructors, Master Nasano, he says that, anytime, when you're always learning. He's always ready to strap on a white belt, and so am I. We're always constantly progressing. So, I think I'm most known for being a Muay Thai coach, but I mean, I've really blended a lot of other striking systems in what I show my fighters and show in my classes. We're blending Muay Thai, Dutch style Muay Thai. We're blending French savate. Elements from Taekwondo, elements from Shotokan, really a lot of different, some of the Chinese kicking styles that I've trained in, and so we're just trying to evolve with the sport and come to some revolutionary movements that we think that we haven't seen out there, that work well for us, in training and sparring. So we're just growing with the sport still.
Yeah, MMA, being an MMA coach in this day and time, it's a lot of fun. Really, I think we're blessed. One is I like to travel, and so through the years, fighting out of Jackson's, I had to talk Greg into doing MMA. Greg Jackson didn't want to take the gym in that direction, but I stayed on him, and I think I broke him down. I was like, come on, now we're going to do it, because I wanted to fight. And I said, look, who's going to coach me? So I was the first black belt, first fighter out of Jackson's, and I finally talked Greg into doing it, and I knew right away it was a wave of the future. Boxing has always had a lot of problems, and as far as with the judges, and it's so limited to two people standing within range, just punching each other. There's so many more weapons. And growing up as a wrestler, I knew I'd take a boxer any day. Like, they couldn't stop a takedown, get them on the ground, then they belonged to me. So I wanted to fight right away. So I talked Greg into it, and we started rolling. And so I was fortunate to fight and to coach over there. And I've got to travel to, I don't know, probably all over the world, Russia, Kazakhstan, Australia, you name it. I've been fortunate to take a trip on somebody else's dime and go and meet people, and made some great friends all around the world. So very blessed.
And now, for Coach Ray, you said you started out Albuquerque Martial Arts. How many different formations or evolutions has your gym taken on? Has your ownership path
That's
taken?
a great question. Really, really great question. So my first gym, as I mentioned, was Albuquerque Martial Arts Academy. It was really focused on real traditional styles. I taught traditional Wing Chun. I taught Filipino stick and knife fighting known as Kali Eskrima. Taught traditional Muay Thai. Jiu-Jitsu principles, but now it went from that to Albuquerque kickboxing. That was the next augmentation. Albuquerque Kickboxing Academy. That was when I did start training a lot of the guys from the Tap Out Ranch. That's pretty much when I first really spent time with Coach Luttrell. I mean, I had met Coach prior to that at I believe a gentleman named Steve Tarani was doing a knife workshop with this exotic Indonesian weapon called a Crombit, and I met Coach Luttrell at that time at the police academy. But again, fast forwarding, Albuquerque Martial Arts Academy became Albuquerque Kickboxing, which became Albuquerque Kickboxing and MMA, and then it became now Luttrell Yee's MMA. So this is the final stage.
And now, Coach, tell us about your path, because I know Luttrell's has bounced around several locations, and there was even a name before that. So tell us about your path.
So while I was a coach at Jackson's, one of the fighters and I got close, Keith Jardine, he was coming to the end of his career, and he was looking at branching out and doing some business. And so he said, hey, Coach, I'd like to open up a gym, MMA and fitness gym, and I'd like you to be the coach. And Greg had always said, hey, why don't you take over at Jackson's? But at the time, being a full-time police officer, I wasn't ready to do that. And plus, the MMA's been more of a passion at that time, and then it was my outlet. So I didn't want to mess it up and turn it into a job, which I ended up doing. But so myself and Keith Jardine and a few others, Coach John, we opened up a gym, Mean One, and we started doing very well and built up pretty good team there. And then we had some misfortune that we had some theft from an employee. I don't want to go into the details about that, but it got real bad, and so we ended up closing shop on that. And so I had this stable of fighters that I felt like I had to take care of. So MMA is kind of going the way of boxing as far as coaches now, because you belong to a real big team. I didn't want to just turn them loose, and because now fighters are working with more and more coaches, so they want individualized attention. And so I opened up Luttrell's for a place for the fighters to train. And we had opened up, we were on the west side for a while, then we moved over here, and then our striking coach, who was a Dutch kickboxer, Hein, he got a job out in Washington, so we left. So I actually approached Coach Yee, and I was like, hey, do you know anybody that would be a good fit? That would, you know, we lost our coach, and I explained it to him, and he's like, yeah, how about me? And I was like, oh, I didn't think you were available. We started talking, and then we merged the, you know, partnership, because, you know, it's kind of what we needed, that top striking aspect. And yeah, so it's just been, it's been going well, and very fortunate.
We have the striking, we have the grappling, so we have the full formula for MMA. I know there's a conditioning coach that comes around. How did you guys end up under one roof now, putting everything under one building to make it easier for both of you, I'm sure?
Well, we're actually going to move again.
They won't stop doing this to me. I know where they are, and now I have to go find them again.
And knock on wood, we're, you know, being, you know, successful. We're outgrowing this location, and so we're looking at getting a bigger location and expanding, and we're getting our name out there. More and more people, you know, worldwide are hearing about us, and like our latest addition to the team, Claudia Gadella. So she joins. She's a part of the team now, and more and more people are hitting us up and asking about training with us, and so we're fortunate.
Claudia Gadella, Gabby Romero, Andreas Quintana, Steven Cervantes, Javier Cepeda, Jalen Fuller, Jordan Espinosa, Kevin Kroom, I believe the team captain. Jerome Rivera.
We've got.
Oh, he's back. That's awesome news too.
Yeah,
Seen him in
now, and we just got, you know, we're lucky. We got a good stable of you know, of fighters that are working together, going in the right direction, and should be fun.
And then how would you say you guys have blended your two philosophies to, like, what would be the Luttrell Yee kind of MMA philosophy?
I don't think there was too much compromise. I think both of us had real similar visions. We had similar philosophies. I mean, really, I think the thing that makes our style very unique is we're at top foremost. We're an MMA, you know, thought process, and really, you know, whatever it takes to win the fight. And for us, a lot of times it's what we call a hitting platform. We want to utilize the striking and the hitting, whether it's elbows, knees, to better the position to either, you know, dominate the fight with finishing it that way, or setting up a real, you know, deep submission. So I think that's really, you know, and work ethics. You know, just do, you know, chopping wood, carrying water every day. You know, just coming, showing up, and working hard. You know, and hard work pays off.
Yeah, we're about close to the same age, kind of from the same generation. So, you know, we see eye on most everything, really.
Luttrell Yee MMA, thank you guys for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.